good morning.
Hey, Nestor, what's going on, man? How the heck are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, man. I'm very excited about this session. How about you?
Oh, I am absolutely doing fantastic. I've been looking forward to this session all week, so I'm super excited to talk about this topic.
There you go. That sounds really good. So let's see what we have in the comments here. Good morning, Kevin.
Oh, Mr. Arnold, what's going on, man?
Yes.
Hope all is well. Hey, hashtag SML.
There you go. So let's wait one more minute, a couple more minutes, and see if more folks join the live session.
Oh, we got six. We're growing. Let's get talking. That's where people get interested. Nestor, did I tell you my new joke?
No, please go
What?
ahead.
All right. What is the difference between a good joke and a bad joke? Timing.
I don't know what it is.
Timing.
Timing. There you go. It's all about timing. There you go.
Holy cow! So one of my favorite things about data is the community that we get to work with. If you ever see hashtag SML, this is a fantastic group that actually meets at this time every Saturday morning. It is an amazing group. It was put together and formed by just a brilliant visionary, Jessica Jolly. Have you ever met Jessica, Nestor?
Sounds familiar to me, but I don't think I met her.
Oh, she is just a wonderful individual. She's really smart. She's put together just this amazing community. Um, it's 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 selective by nature. They make sure that the only people that come in are people who are really passionate about data and working together and helping a community grow and work. And frankly, I feel very blessed and lucky to be part of that and to have found that area. Uh,
That sounds good.
yeah, yeah.
So what is it stand for?
Saturday morning, I think it's Saturday morning learning is what it
Hey,
is.
man, you guys are really smart.
Yeah, Kevin's on both. Kevin is and if you have not had a chance to work with Kevin, he's another brilliant individual. He's been working in building out Power BI content, data models, working in diverse areas, working with different data sets, and really helping bring the insights that he's gained from working in this space and sharing that with other people. Really, the work Kevin does is fantastic. He's got a YouTube channel as well. If I had a link, I'd post well, I'd share it to you so you can post it because I'm not a contributor there. But Kevin, post in your chat your YouTube thing, and we'll share that.
Yeah,
All right.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I should meet Kevin. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's great.
Okay, that sounds good. So why don't we get started?
Fantastic.
Let me share what we have here real quick, and then we can go.
Okay, let's get her.
Over
Let's
these
get
topics.
to her. Let's go.
All right. Okay, so let me know if you guys can see it.
Thumbs up. We're looking good, dude.
Nice. Very
How
nice.
you doing? That's my Isaac from Love Boat. Did you ever see Love Boat, Nestor?
I don't think so.
Oh, that is I believe early 80s, maybe late 70s TV show. Fantastic.
Yeah, I should do that.
Very
okay.
cheesy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Chris, for joining. It's definitely a pleasure to chat with you.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm really passionate and I absolutely love this topic. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Awesome. So let's go over the agenda real quick. We have an introduction. We're going to talk about the enterprise data in Power BI. We'll give the opportunity to the folks, the audience as well, to ask a few questions. We'll talk about your educational platforms and also final thoughts.
Fantastic.
So let's move on.
All right.
Chris, I know you are quite famous. Everyone knows about yourself. you're quite popular. But anyways, tell us more about yourself, please. I know you have
Well,
a lot of experience.
I don't know if I'm popular or not. I know some people know me, some people follow me. I've got I do a YouTube channel, I post on LinkedIn, I run a website called Kratos BI, home of the data gods. It's absolutely a passion project of mine because I love connecting with people like yourself, Nestor, and highlighting the great work that people are doing and contributing to helping others in the community grow and do more with data and analytics because I really believe that changes their lives. Now, I have something new that we're breaking on this podcast for the very first time. No one's ever heard this. No one knows about this until now. But if you want to engage with me, you now can. I have recently joined Baker Tilly as a consultant. So if you go over to bakertilly.com/digital, we have an amazing Pathfinder program that has a proven track record of really helping companies modernize their data strategy. And you go out there, sign up, register, leaving the process that you're hoping to be able to work with me. And like I guarantee we'll at least get on a call, start to talk about how we could scale up and help your organization mature and transform your enterprise data and analytics solutions. So very excited to announce that.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Hey, I was exploring your website. It's fantastic. I love it. Tell me
Oh,
more about the data gods.
sure.
So that idea is crazy. I love it.
Yeah. So I got I've been working in data and analytics for 2 decades now. And once you've been in it for a while, you kind of make it look way easier than it is, right? Like this stuff is hard. It takes a long time to I can't tell you how many countless nights I've spent trolling through log files, reading and through blogs, trying to figure out why the heck things work or why the heck things don't work, right? Um, but it kind of got to the point in my career where I was making things look so easy at times that people are like, wow, you are a wizard, you're a ninja. And then one day someone said, you are a freaking data god. How did you get to be like this? This is incredible. And the reality is, I'm like, it was a lot of hard work, but it came from following people like yourself, following the Marco Russos, following the Adam Saxtons, following all of these great people that are in the community that are helping us grow and learn in this rapidly evolving landscape. And so I thought, you know what? I really should highlight these people because, while some people call me a data god, they're the ones who are the real data gods that like I learn from and that we can all learn from. And so I started to highlight that because I wanted to thank them for their community contributions. And I couldn't think of a funner way than a little custom artwork and a nice little blog piece on people. So yes.
No, that's really good. Definitely a good concept. Love that. That you are definitely the Power BI boss, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that
No,
was Patrick LeBlanc said, "Oh, yeah, he referenced that title and me a few times, and so I jokingly took on the Power BI boss
that's really
moniker."
that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Okay. So, well, if you haven't connected with Chris, please make sure you follow him on Instagram and all the social platforms as well.
Yes,
Okay.
LinkedIn. I'm not an Insta guy. I don't even
Okay.
really know what Insta is, other than noodles. There's instant noodles. There's instant rice. I don't know what an Instagram is. How many Insta rice are in an Instagram is unclear on uh, that conversion. But just uh, someone will have to create a chart for that so I can understand that. That'd be great.
Good, good. All right. Awesome. So
Uh,
now this is the time, friends. So let's get started with this awesome topic, enterprise data and Power BI. So let's talk about enterprise data models.
Sure. Um, so the great thing about Power BI is how flexible of a tool it is and how much you can work with it. and how blazing fast it is in many situations. You could just throw kind of almost any data at it, and it's just super fast, right? So many people, when they get in, they grab some data from Excel, they grab some data from SharePoint, they run a query, they pull data out of Snowflake, they bring data in, and it just works, right? Like they don't have to do anything more to it. Eventually, as that data model starts to grow and starts to get bigger, they have to start learning things like facts and dimensions, and they slowly start to add those in. But it's very easy and possible for people to have a very functional report and very functional solution that has a less than perfect model on the back end, just because the back end is so performant and so flexible. But when you start to talk about an enterprise data model, that's really going to start to get very large, because when I'm talking about those ad hoc data models, I am talking about those data models that are in the you know, 1 to 5 gig range. Maybe you go upwards of 10. If you have a PPU, maybe you're using something of a larger data set. But the larger your data model gets, the more you need to get to that truly perfect star schema inside your data. That's where you're going to have to start to really refactor and refine your loads. You're going to have to really be dialed in on your conforming dimensions. And it gets to the point where you have to be um, very specific and almost draconian when it comes to working with your star schema and that enterprise model, because it needs to be performant. And so you have to be able to test any changes that you put in, and it becomes a real challenge. The reason I bring that up is because a lot of people will just enter in and see, like, hey, I have a 5 gig model, or I have a 1 gig model. It works great. Why can't I scale this? Why is this a problem? Because they don't take the time to necessarily understand and learn what it takes to go from that like ad hoc model to something that is an enterprise model, right? Now, good thing, and I mean the absolute best thing here is um, you can do it. You can take a model that you've built out and is small, and you can scale it to, from 1 gigs to 10 gigs to 100 gigs to 400 gigs to a multi-terabyte model with tons and tons of information that's brought in, and uh, that you've got all sorts of dynamic processes that are loading it. It's entirely possible, because the code base, that backend code base between that ad hoc model and that big huge multi-terabyte model is the same. It's just up to you to make sure you have proper modeling in place. Okay, so that's a big thing that a lot of people don't like miss, and they think they kind of know it, right? Like, oh, I can't pull it out. I got stickers in the way. Hey, new stickers on my website. Buy me a coffee. If you want me to send you stickers, head over to kratosbi.com. Got brand new stickers that just showed up today. Blah, ow. Oh, where's my camera? There it is. um, but um, but if you're thinking about taking a model you have that you've built out, and maybe you're using for 5 people to in an agile development methodology, which is awesome, you should totally do that. Make sure as you add things in, as you add in new pieces of your model, you're testing that performance out so that you know that it works and it operates, because there's some things that you're going to have to eliminate from your model when you go to that enterprise space. Number one being gone are the many to many joins, right? Gone are the bi-directional joins. You're going to have to become very cognizant of row level security and who your audiences are and what the capabilities are that people are engaging with. All right. Um, and understanding that that's going to take a longer journey to get there is an important thing. All right. Another big thing that you need to have when it comes to working with enterprise models and enterprise based reports is understanding what it takes to train your help desk in order to respond to questions people have on your data, right? Because if you're an independent, Power BI content creator, maybe you're servicing, 10, 20, 100 people. That you can handle those questions as they kind of start to come in. if you're suddenly you go to 10,000 people who are consuming your reports, that's something that's going to be above and beyond what one individual is able to do when it comes to answering questions like, hey, why can't I connect to this report? Why am I not seeing this data? Right? Like you're going to have all of these questions are going to start to come in. You're going to need to have that help desk support. You're going to need to have that ticketing queue that people can triage and make sure things are addressed, and those basic connectivity issues are addressed before they get escalated to you, right? All of these things start to really come into play when you talk about going to an enterprise model. Now, that does not mean if you work in an enterprise where you have that one model, which is good, right? Because if you go to that golden model that a lot of people talk about, or that the Starlight architecture that Microsoft recommends has, where you have one blessed model for your enterprise, that is awesome. But it also means that you're going to have a whole bunch of other people that are going to be, needing to solve needs that are beyond the scope or outside of the realm of that enterprise-based model, right? And that's where we start to get into that next topic of that diverse skill levels. Because what goes on inside your enterprise models isn't necessarily going to go on inside these lesser or other models. Nestor, does that align with what you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we can create really, like you mentioned, the ad hoc models can work perfectly fine because the data is just small. But once you scale it to an enterprise data model, you might have issues, right? Performance issues. That's why you have to make sure that you build a strong model. And then, like you mentioned before, the starter schema is the way, because
Yep.
Power BI is designed for that specific schema. So what do you think about the starter schema? What are your thoughts on that? Because I've heard a lot of people that say they use a different type of schema to work on their models. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's a great question. So Power BI, the engine behind Power BI, the tabular engine, 100% relies upon and counts upon a star schema.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go to Roche's maximum about pushing transformations as far upstream as possible, but as far downstream as necessary, um, especially when it comes to larger or more enterprise models, you may use a data vault schema in order to prep, stage, and get your data in a out and available for data engineering, data science, for historical information. Um, but that data vault schema is not the end state that people are going to use for access. You're going to need to take that extra step in order to move that into that star schema. And you have some options. You could do that inside of Power Query, so you could access it. You could transform your dimensions, kind of try to stitch that together. But that's something that you should not be looking at doing inside of an enterprise data model. That's something that you should be asking your data engineering team to work with you on to build that out, so that you have those fact tables and you have those hardcore dimension tables, and that you have data validation and testing and reruns and um, all of the processes that are necessary to keep that data quality high. Because if your data quality dips and people aren't seeing the information that they expect to see, you're going to see people lose faith and trust in your data platform, and that leads to horrible things when it comes to getting support, when it comes to getting funding. You could just run into all sorts of different challenges there.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I have a quick question, and it's related to the way how we clean the data before we start building the models.
Hmm.
I know you mentioned Power Query. So
Hmm.
Power Query is huge, and the normalization process is also really important if we are working on strong data models. But what are your thoughts on the idea of having or making changes in the source rather than in Power BI?
Oh, uh, so for an enterprise model,
Mm-hmm.
why is my camera not focusing?
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
There we go. Uh, for an enterprise model, um, I think it's very important for all those transformations to be upstream and available in like a process layer inside of your data lakehouse or data warehouse. All right. Um, where that differs, though, is those models that are available for an individual, a team, or a department may need some exploratory dimensions, exploratory transformations as people are doing an analysis and want to watch that over a period of time. For example, know some companies will think about doing compensation changes for their sales force, and they try to look at what that would mean revenue wise, what that would mean compensation wise over a period of time, they would look at doing an evaluation change, right? Like if we said that these people were good and that or we create criteria for like top performers, medium performers, and low performers, how accurate are we in predicting uh, how well that employee will do over a multi-year period of time? Well, that type of thing is something that a company is analyzing, and they might want to include inside of a departmental report. But that type of thing may be very specific to that department, and it may be something that they don't want other people to have access and see, right? Like if you're doing well according to your current company's metrics and performance, uh, you know, maybe you don't want to think that like, oh, you could be categorized as a low performer under this new setting, right? Because they don't want to cause any problems, right? They don't know if this criteria is good or bad, right? Like, they don't want to miscategorize you any more than you want to be miscategorized, right? So a company may stand those dimensions up, stand those transformations up, own that for a period of time in a non-enterprise uh, a dimensional model or a dimension or field, right, that they add in and add into their analytics, but that they don't do in other places. In those situations, I think it makes perfect sense for people to uh, use Power Query to manage that content.
Yep, Power Query is huge.
Hmm.
It's definitely huge.
Do you disagree? Do you think there should be more Power Query in enterprise models, or no?
No, I think Power Query is a really powerful tool,
Hmm.
and I agree with your statement. So you can do many things with Power Query. So specifically for cleaning data,
Yeah.
it's really powerful.
Well, and I think it is powerful also in that it allows, like I said, departments or teams or individuals to experiment. And the
Hmm.
nice thing Power Query has is the integration across like Azure Data Factory. Um, so very soon, because right now there's some limitations in, like if you write a Power Query and you take that over and you want to promote that into like let's say creating an enterprise dimension. Um, Today you're limited in the functions that you can call within Power Query. It doesn't have a one-for-one code base. Tomorrow, though, that's going to change, right? Tomorrow we're going to be able to take what was built in Power Query and directly run that inside of our Synapse data pipelines and be able to then get scale performance on our loads. So, for example, if I'm loading data in using Power Query, I am limited by what my pro license or my PPU or my premium capacity has available at that individual moment. When you're able to scale that over and run that inside of Synapse, you can use as many resources as necessary to run that Power Query without impacting your Power BI, without impacting any of your existing infrastructure. So that has a very promising future uh, for us when it comes to be able to take code that an individual made and transfer that up into the enterprise without having to do a rewrite. Like, because today, if you need to do that, you have to take that Power Query code, and then someone has to look at it, and they have to transform it into SQL, or they have to transform it into Python. And there's a process with that, and you run into discrepancies because it's not the exact same code base. Soon or tomorrow, I don't know exactly when, uh, that will disappear.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the next topic, so what are your recommendations in terms of tools to perform or analyze the models and to make sure that the model is performing well? I know Performance Analyzer is the native tool that we have in Power BI, but what other tools could you recommend?
Well, so if you're talking about Power BI tools, you have to
Hmm.
start with Tabular Editor 3. All right.
Hmm.
Especially if you're talking about enterprise models.
Hmm.
Um, uh, if you have an enterprise model and you're going to be managing that code base, uh, with DevOps and all of that stuff, you need to tell your company that they have to invest in the Tabular Editor 3 paid licensing. The additional capabilities, the speed of performance, and the speed of development that you get inside Tabular Editor 3 is hands down the absolute best way to um, ensure that your development process is as fast as possible. Because let's face it, if you're talking about an enterprise model, you're talking about and you know at a minimum a 25 to 50 gig model. If you're talking about and anything beyond or above 25 50 gigs, you're really talking about spending a significant amount of money on Power BI Premium, right? Like, I think a P2 is what you need for 50 gigs of memory. So that means you're spending P1's 5,000 a month, P2 is 10 grand a month. So 120 grand a month on Power BI by your developers, an annual Power BI or a Tabular Editor 3 license, that is nothing. I mean, just look at what we spend on dev tools before. This is hands down the number one thing to do. All right. So we've got that. I would also say, you can use Tabular Editor 3, you can use DAX Studio, to do that model analysis, to help you when it comes to understanding what you've got going inside of your model. I've also used a service called Gatlin um, to track and manage the performance of visuals rendering because, that can be incredibly important for people to know what's going on when it comes to how fast people are actually seeing data. So they can start to track that, and you can actually log that information every single day. And then a big thing that can really help you is the combination of Power BI Premium and Log Analytics. Nestor, have you integrated Power BI Premium with Log Analytics before?
I haven't had the opportunity yet.
Okay. So what log analytics allows you to do is get some real deep, detailed logging of what's going on inside of your analytical model to see what people are doing, to see what people are hitting inside your model. Um, and that allows you to understand with much more rich detail what is actually being used inside of your analytical model, right? So, like today, you go into like Power BI, you can see who's hitting your reports, but you can't necessarily see what they're doing with their reports. You can't tell as they're interacting with them, um, and how long things are taking to run. And yes, Dax Studio, and there's all these other people have done blogs on the performance and stuff. Do look those up. SQL BI's got a great one on that stuff. I'm talking about some other things out there that people generally don't talk about. Um, and but by logging your information inside of log analytics, you can run KQL queries against it. You can build out monitoring reports on top of that to actually build up an entire dashboard so you can see, like, hey, that dimension that you didn't want to add because it was like 400 columns wide and it takes an hour to refresh every single day. Well, you can go in and look and go back to the business and say, hey, look, I've been through the log files in the last 30 days. Of those 400 columns you insisted upon, we're using these three. Can we cut out, these other, you know, 350 columns and just keep 50 in here, so that you can, greatly reduce your load time, greatly reduce your the amount of time it takes to bring data in, right? So that log analytics integration is absolutely fabulous. Um, there is a great blog by Curtis Stallings on how to, or 5 great KQL queries to analyze what's going on inside your analytical models. I highly recommend people going out and taking a look at those 5 queries, because those 5 queries include in them the basics for joins, the basic for analysis, to do super deep dives into what's going on inside your log files. So it's just out of this world fantastic. All right.
Thank you for sharing that, Chris.
Yeah,
More is less, less is more, right?
that is very true.
Just upload what you need.
Right. Yep. I mean, that goes back to the basics of it. But I think a lot of times when you talk about an enterprise model, you're starting to talk about a large team that's supporting the model, right? So many people are
Mhm.
building it, many people are having asks and requirements from it, and so they come in and you're often pulled in, potentially way downstream. Like they've been working with the data engineers for months or whatever, and now all of a sudden they're telling you to build this model. It's like, well, hang on, right? Like, y- you know, yeah, you have to all of a sudden find yourself making some compromises or whatnot. Um, but this gives you the ability and the ammunition to fire back and say, hang on, let's not do some of this stuff. Let's get back to best practices. This is why we restrict the number of columns we add, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic.
sure.
So let's talk about the skills that we need for to do this work.
Sure. Well, and I think when we talk about diverse skills, it's also diverse skill levels, right? So when you talk about enterprise models, um, uh, we're going to start with how an enterprise model and is managed or should be managed and then consumed and used, right? When we start to get to that really enterprise space, you're going to start to separate out roles and capabilities, right? We're not talking about like a one-man shop, a guy who's building out a model and building out reports and necessarily meeting with all the end users and doing all the distribution. You're starting to break out some of those capabilities, right? And so you'll have your enterprise model, right, or handful of models that exist. Um, but then as the model is created, as it's being used, you're going to have a whole bunch of different report builders that are going to sit on top of that model, building out reports based off of that model, right? Now, the good thing about this structure is because the analytical model is built in place and managed by people who have a skill set that's based upon managing code and working with analytics and going deep into tabular modeling and deep into DAX, right? And deep into all of these different data ops capabilities. You can now start to have people who are on the front end who can spend more time with the business, understanding what actions should be taken from these reports. And so they can spend their time fully on working with business and delivering value, right? And the analytical models can be, really focusing on enhancing it and enriching it to meet the needs of those report builders in that are out there and consuming that information. Now, that means the people that you're going to be interacting with are going to be somewhat technically proficient, right? They're going to know some things about Power BI to some degree. Some will know a lot, some will know a little. Um, and you'll need to be able to work with them to understand what it is they're asking for and how to interpret, especially someone who is like a citizen data engineer or citizen analytics engineer. When they come in and say, "Hey, I want this fact in this dimension," when you look and go, "That's a multi," that's got oh my gosh, that's got many to many join on it. You can provide feedback and helping them understand and grow their knowledge of how shape and model data, right? But I think it also comes when we talk about diverse skill level, it goes into what people are consuming and using when it comes to uh, inside the model. What are they using inside the model, right? Or how are they using the model, right? So some people will want to use that enterprise model as is. Other people, like the departments I talked about earlier, they're going to want to own more of that model. So they're not just going to want to come in and use that one enterprise model. They're going to have some very good reasons for why they want to come in and do something that's exploratory, do something that's specific to their department, right? Do something that is a deviation from that enterprise model. And the great thing about these tools is it's very easy for them to do that, to take on Power Query, to do some transformations, to bring those loads together, to try and find insights to help move the business forward. And while many organizations will push back on it, they'll say, hey, we have one enterprise model. We want to have one path here that we can use and we can count on, so that when I see sales in one place, it's the same as sales in another. We don't want to have that. Actually push back on organizations that say, hang on, maybe you do, right? Maybe they can help you find an insight because they're going to look at that data from a different angle than you're thinking about. They're going to do some things to help shape it a different way that could help transform the way you look and engage your business. Okay. But let's put some controls around it, right? Like that's not the enterprise model, right? You've got your enterprise model that works and behaves as the enterprise wants. If there's an individual or if there's a team or department that wants to have those special flavors out there, allow them to do that, right? And be open and understand that you're going to have people with different skill levels creating these things. The good thing about that is what it does is it bifurcates where requests go inside your enterprise space, right? So if it's something that needs to go into the enterprise reporting and is publicly available broadly to the enterprise, well, then that goes down one path. But anything that is not for the enterprise, so if it's just for a team or if it's just for a department or just for an individual, that allows them to take care of and work on delivering those capabilities without having to impact the enterprise team. Now, if you happen to work in a data team or a platform where you happen to have more resources than you have work, please let me know. You'll be the first person I've ever encountered in the data space that has more resources than work. So I'd love to hear how you got funding in your organization. But for the most part, if you're an enterprise team, you're going to have far more work and far more demands than you're ever going to have bodies who can help you with it, right? So if you can channel 80% of those requests over back to that business and let them deal with it on their own, that's outside of your enterprise space, that's much better for the overall um, health of the organization, health of building out a data culture. Uh, Nestor, have you seen this inside organizations you've engaged with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't interact very much with engineers, the folks that put together the models and also the
Okay.
databases and everything. But I see your point there. And and I have a question about the skills needed for to handle, enterprise data in Power
hmm
BI. So you talk about engineers, you talk about, I think you said data scientists or something like that. So
Uh,
tell us more about the actors there.
sure.
It's needed to have a strong enterprise data model.
Great. Well, when you talk about a data culture or when you talk about your enabling data, I think it's important to think of kind of three different personas. You've got your data engineering persona, you've got your data analyst persona, and you've got your data scientist persona. Now, many people will share hats, right? Like, okay, some days I'm doing some data science work, or some days I'm doing some data and engineering work, but most of the time I'm a data analyst, right? Um, Especially in large organizations. If you're in a smaller organization, like you may be the guy who has to just do everything, right? And uh, you know, you own and have to do everything, right? But in large organizations, that gets separated out. Now, when we separate these things out, it's really important to understand that it's more of a Venn diagram than separate capabilities, right? Like, I know some people who, like, oh, if they're a data analyst, they don't want to do any data engineering, and if you're a data engineering, oh, you don't want to do any data visualization, right, or data or business analysis. And the reality is that that can't be the case, right? These three different personas have to have some ability to go into the different areas. Like, data analyst is going to really struggle if they don't do have some ability to do some data engineering capabilities, right? So if you don't know Power Query, you're going to really struggle unless they've done everything, right? Same thing, like, if you're a data engineer, there's some lightweight AI packages that are out there that can or ML packages that you could probably use without having to engage a full-fledged data scientist, right? Um, uh, but I think you know, making sure that they each have their environment to work in and that they're free to kind of flow back and forth and know that they kind of need to be able to flow back and forth is important, right? Like, having data scientists like kind of just sitting on their hands waiting for data engineers to deliver data is and I'm sorry to say it, that's a surefire way to get your data science budget eliminated or dramatically cut, because nobody's going to see any value. They're like, well, we hired the data scientists, they didn't deliver anything. Even though hey, you said the data engineering was going to give it to us all. Well, that's not necessarily how this works, right? Like, everyone still has to be able to contribute and deliver something, right? So, we have to be open to be able to work in these different streams. But
Exactly.
I think when it comes to an enterprise tooling, though, that you asked about, um, there are some additional tools and some concepts that we really need to get more people aware of or thinking about. And that's the concept of data ops. This is akin to DevOps on the application side, except for data ops is a very different beast than than DevOps. It's similar in many ways because we're talking about concepts in the DevOps space that have been maturing since like 2015. So they've been around for like 7 years or so. So those concepts are starting to be matured. We're starting to go through different versions of DevOps. But when we talk about data ops, it while it can learn from and use a lot of the tools from our DevOps space, data ops needs more because one of the big things we have that differentiates data ops from DevOps is we need to be able to bring masses of data or data masses from one environment to another or through transformations or not. And so you end up having to do not just, hey, did my code deploy and does my app look the way I expect it to do? And is it doing things that we'd like? But now you have to do things like data validation, and you have to be able to like do inline and offline integrity testing, right? And you have to be able to roll back data automatically. And you need to know, what does that mean, right? Like, how, especially if you're talking about like having a mixture of like batch loads versus incremental loads versus live streaming data. How do you handle each of these data feeds when you have to do a rollback? It becomes a real challenge for people, but it's something that is starting to evolve, and we're getting more and more people spending time in this, and this is a skill set that I think we need to see more people investing in, because that's key to
Exactly.
the success, right?
Yeah. So, what would you say? I mean, you already touched this on this topic, but companies that have limited resources, like you said, so everyone should know a bit of here, so you can be familiar with everything. If you're specifically a small company, like like you said, a data analyst should know a little bit of engineering,
Hmm.
a little bit of the scientist role, things like that. So
Well, and that's a great question. It's also why I kind of or in fact, not kind of, I heavily advocate for, as you build out your data culture and as you build out your work, is to start to look and respect having people come in and work at different skill levels, right?
Hmm.
Have the people who are the experts and masters at the topic, like set standards, provide guidance, help people out, but understand that, what works at an enterprise level or what works at a higher level may not work at other levels below them. So, for example, if having a fully integrated DevOps and CI/CD pipeline is goes above and beyond the skill levels and capabilities inside your org. Look at things like the Power BI data pipelines, right? That help you manage code, help you move things between different environments so you can have your development where you can go explore and change things up. You can have your staging where people can go in and make sure that it looks right. You can have your production environment that people can engage with, right? I think that's helping people get along that path, right? And so if you find yourself in a situation where you're like, man, I have to wear way too many of these hats, this has to be easier. Look at how you can make it easier. Don't try to do the full on pro dev path if you don't necessarily have those capabilities or those time and resources. If you are short on resources, maybe having a dev, a QA, a production environments uh, is too much, right? That takes on overhead, right? Having these different things, you got to move the code, you got to run, you got to validate, you got to move it. It's a process goes with it. Time and energy goes into it. Maybe you just have two environments, right? You build it out in dev. Once it's all good and you're happy with it, you move it to production, right? So you have to kind of figure out what's going to be a balance for you inside your organization.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So let's talk about cows here. Do you think we have cows in these data models? I don't think so. Just kidding.
Oh, chaos.
Chaos, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, well, yes. And that kind of leads into the next point is, um, if you're talking about working in Power BI and working inside of an organization, one of the big things people are very concerned with, and they kind of fall into two camps, and that are, it's based upon where you are on your data journey. If you're just starting out at the data journey, you're looking forward at peers and seeing what their biggest challenges are, and you're going, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to have that." And if you're further along on your like Power BI journey, um, you've encountered some things that are a struggle, right? Like I've seen enterprises where they've got tens of thousands of data sets, tens of thousands of reports, right? Uh, Annuals, like where you could search for annual sales report and you can have 180 reports show up inside of Power BI, right? Which one of these is possibly the right thing for me, right? And so companies are either in that situation where they're like, oh my gosh, what have we done? Look at what we have. Or they're in the situation of like, okay, we're just starting down this journey. Oh my gosh, we don't want to have this chaos. Well, here's the thing that we want to do when it comes to managing this chaos, because uh, there's something innately powerful that comes from chaos, which is there's a chaotic energy that can fuel transformation, can drive insights that can, dramatically change your business, right? Get out of the like, oh, well, we are projecting a 3.3% growth rate over the next 4 fiscal quarters, right? Like, that's all well and good, right? Like, hey, that's fine, but that's not transformative in your business, right? That's not, hey, you know what? We have an opportunity to double our sales. We have an opportunity to 10x our sales, right? Those opportunities exist. We've seen them exist inside of the world of business. Um, Allowing for some chaos allows for people to find and uncover where those 10x or 100x opportunities are so that people can take advantage of them. At the same time, you don't want that chaos to bleed into your enterprise spaces and enterprise reporting until it's become something that's managed. So I think it's important to allow for chaos to exist and understand what's going on inside your organization, but separate out a space that is purely ordered and only allow that purely ordered space to be available for the enterprises, to be available to executives, sales managers, that type of a thing, so that you can have your enterprise ordered, structured. Hey, these are the numbers we pay bonuses out on. This is where you find like healthcare information, right? This is like the truly, this is the right actions. We know this is defined and this is what should be going on. Have that in a very ordered space that is tightly controlled and regulated. Have an analytical board that reviews the analysis and approves what the recommended next steps are before it goes into that space, right? Have code reviews, have validations that go on inside that space, right? So that you get to that single sales report, that single view of information, right? Get that, have that available for you. But at the same time, allow for a space, and a space that's going to be probably very, very large, to exist where people can explore and test things out and look for those insights that would be that 10x, that 100x performance booster. And when you find those things, make sure make sure that it goes through the process so that it can move into that enterprise space and can be leveraged.
Exactly.
Right.
So I have a kind of tricky question. So since
Hmm.
we have a lot of chaos there, are
Hmm.
we allowed to make mistakes?
Of course, everyone makes mistakes, right? Um, the it's the mighty oak that falls in the tornado. It's the willow that bends with the intense winds. We should be flexible where necessary, uh, but rigid as well where we have to, right? That ordered space, like uh, should you have an exception process? Of course, you'll have an exception process for that ordered space, but it should be the exception. If you find like, hey, 3 out of 5 reports that go in there have exceptions on it, that is not a that's not an exception. That's a norm, right? So an exception is 1 in 100, not one in 1 in 3 or 1 in 2, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your experience, Chris.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure, man. This is
So
something I'm super passionate about, love talking about, and want people to be able to take this and bring this into their organization. So individuals, teams, and departments are free to go in, do what they need to do. But we also need to make sure that we also have that pure curated spot where people can know that the information here is completely and totally dependable and you can rely upon it.
yeah,
And that's something that does take executive sponsorship. At Microsoft, they went through the exact same challenge like 5, 6 years ago, maybe a little longer now. But like Satya Nadella walked into like would sit in meetings and like all people would do was argue about like what sales number is right, and
exactly.
he said no more. They created this concept of like, okay, order and chaos, right? And they called it their Starlight architecture. Um, but that ordered space was strictly enforced, and they were very very strict on that, and that came from Satya. I mean, there's stories of him walking out of meetings 2 minutes in when they tried to present information that did not come from this curated source
Mhm.
of information, and he just walked right out because he knew he could not rely upon that information. And so some of that stuff takes leadership, some of that stuff takes executive buy-in, and And these are conversations that directors and leaders and C-suites need to have and understand, like, hey, this is the level of commitment they need to put into investing in this and making sure that this gets up and runs, or else chaos bleeds through and takes over everything.
Yep, I definitely agree with you, especially when you are comparing numbers, right? So hey, this is the we have a strong financial result for this month, and this is what we have, and then oh, the number is this one right here, different numbers because they're coming from different sources. So
Right. And everyone comes in and says every department's doing great and every project's super successful. And yes, every single person should get the maximum bonus. Like, okay, number one, there's not an unlimited bonus pool, so we're going to have to filter that out anyways. Number two, if we're all curating our own data and cherry picking what it means to be profitable, like, that's why we get in situations like that. And that's just really negative and toxic for the world of analytics to allow for that.
exactly. Okay, so let's move on to the next one.
Awesome.
If we have questions, let's answer a few questions for the audience. So let's see. So this is your time, folks. If you have a couple of questions, we can go ahead and answer them. Let me see here in the chat. There is one question here from Ryan. So would you rather put a data mart into a Power BI dataset and build a report, or build an extra dataset specific for a report?
Oh, Ryan, that is a fantastic question. Hey, can you put me full screen?
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can do that.
Huh? Oh, all right.
How about that?
That works out. All right. So I have got a series of videos that I am actively recording right now about data marts, when and where you use them. But for a specific example, to Ryan, to answer your questions, should you put a data mart in and then build a report on it, or do it, or data mart and a data set and then a report on it, or should you just build a specific data set? I am a big fan of like the Roach principle: move your transformations as far up as possible, as downstream as necessary. If you're using a data mart, you're not going to be on the enterprise data team, right? That's all up there. But a data mart allows you to put in your transformations, build that into one place that you can use that, and then use that in either one or more data sets for you to consume your reports on. Now, I do recommend that you try to have a data set for as many reports as possible. That is the Microsoft's recommendation. That's what they're using as well. They have one massive model that they use for all their, like, 250,000, 300,000 employees they have. They all use this one data model. Now, if you're not if you're doing that, you have to be a hardcore data engineer, hardcore modeling. Like, that can be very hard for people. If that's not where you're at on your skill level journey, that is totally fine. And that's where a data mart can be very helpful for you in creating one or more data sets in order to support your reporting. But one of the big things data marts offers is for you to start to mature your processes so that you can store that information inside your data mart in a way that can be consumed by those data sets in many different times, right?
Awesome.
That's a fantastic question, Ryan.
Thank you for sharing.
500 Kratos points to you.
There you go. Thanks for sharing that, Chris.
Yeah.
Do we have time for another question, or?
Yeah, let's keep it going.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Let me find more questions here. Let's see. Okay. How about this question?
Oh, wow. Christopher De La Cruz dropping a great one. Boy, you guys are bonus points to you guys today. What about a DBA in the cloud environment? Since many options of a SQL database are paths now, would this skill set be taken by a data engineer, or do you think a cloud DBA can be viable? That is absolutely a fantastic question. Um, that the answer to that is it really gets into the size of the organization that you operate in. If you're a very small shop and you only have a handful of people that are engaging and working inside there, then that data engineer is going to have to wear many hats, and he's going to have one of those hats is going to have to be a DBA because there's still while that service is now running, or well that cloud service, if you got Azure SQL, Microsoft handles a lot of the environment stuff, and that's still a thing. There's still a lot of DBA tasks that you end up taking on, right? For example, tuning a table, dealing with loads, dealing with query locks, all sorts of things along those lines. A DBA has to get involved in order to help with. Um, so if you have like a large organization with hundreds of people in it, and you've got many developers in that space, you're going to find that DBA skill set is still very necessary. And in fact, those DBAs are going to be doing a whole bunch of things now okay, so you're no longer managing like an infrastructure, but you're managing DevOps and scale capabilities. You're managing a cloud security and integration points, right? So um, is it still necessary? 100%. Just the job and the responsibilities are going to shift. Okay. But if you're inside of a smaller org, you might find that is something that has been blended in with the data engineering space.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
I don't think we have more questions. So let's move on to the next point.
Awesome.
Okay. So a lot of people want to learn more about yourself, about your work. Where can they find you?
Sure. You can find me on YouTube. So like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff over on my YouTube channel. Chris Wagner, Data God, Kratos BI. You can search for any of that and find me there. Follow me on LinkedIn. This is where I post most of my content, or I post lots of my content over on LinkedIn. That's my primary feed, where I have the most followers and do the most stuff is LinkedIn. You can also find me on Twitter, at KratosBI.com. Fantastic place to follow me. I'll do more lighthearted stuff on Twitter. So jokes, memes, that type of thing. I'll do on Twitter. Far less of much more on the professional front on the LinkedIn side. If you're saying to yourself, "Geez, I gotta get me a data god. Need problems. I need help." Head over to bakertilly.com/digital. Sign up for more information. Look into our Pathfinder program. We can get you on the straight and narrow, helping you with address your digital data and analytical strategy needs with proven track records and proven forms of success. And then, as always, connect with me on KratosBI.com. Head over, check out all the Data God profiles that I'm posting out there. I think I did like 50 of them last year. I'm going to try to do 50 more this year. Well, hopefully see what I do. So check them out. I've been trying to do you can go and see. I highlight a Data God of the week. I think I only got to like 30 of them last year, but there's a lot of work going on. But check it out. If you want to support my stuff, you can go out there. You can buy me a coffee. And the new stickers that are in. Where's my camera? There they are. I'll send one of those out to you as well. So thank you guys so much. And the $3 to buy coffee just covers the cost of the stickers, stamps, postage, all that good stuff. So thank you guys so much for everything, and do like and subscribe to Nestor's channel as well. This is fantastic.
That's awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Please make sure to follow Chris. There you have the platforms right there.
Thank you.
Okay. So final thoughts.
Final thought is, there's a lot that goes on in this data analytics world. We need to embrace the chaos that comes along with this, because inside that chaos is that spark of creativity, that spark of life. Because when the Big Bang occurred and the world and everything was spinning in chaos. From that chaotic world, life formed, evolved, and grew to the pinnacle, which is creating and managing and working in Power BI. So we are the apex of all creation and working in Power BI, but that only came from chaos. So don't lose sight of that. Embrace it and live it, love it, and enjoy.
Cool, cool, cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I think that's it.
All right.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Chris, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your time. I know you are a busy man, so I appreciate that.
Well, it's my pleasure, Nestor. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you to everyone who is on the live stream, joining, asking questions, and participating in this. This has been a blast. I look forward to connecting with you and following with you on the various social media areas.
All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Yep. Bye-bye.